The High Court in Pretoria is sitting for a second day of the NHI case. The Board of Healthcare Funders representing 40 medical schemes and the South African Private Practitioners Forum have approached the court in a bid to halt the implementation of the National Health Insurance Act. SABC News economics reporter Katlego Legodi is standing by for us. Thanks very much for joining us, Katlego. Tell us what the latest is.
A very good afternoon to Nompu and to our viewers at home. You're right, you're coming to you live this morning, or this afternoon rather, on day 2 of this court case that is happening at the High Court in Pretoria. So we see various of those medical aids represented by BHP and coming through with the forum as well, just arguing before Judge Twala that this particular act should be set aside as it's unconstitutional and it does not meet the criteria in terms of the Constitution. So we see today under the spotlight section 84 of the Constitution coming into play in terms of the powers of the president, but also at the same time we see section 17 of the Constitution coming under the spotlight, where they're talking about limitations as well and some of the issues that will have to be taken into consideration before the president can sign this act into law. A moment ago we were just seeing the lawyers of SAFI just being on the podium, on the floor, just telling Judge Twala on why then they figure that this particular act in its nature right now is not constitutional and it should be set aside. Earlier on, what was argued was the issue of jurisdiction as well, because you can understand that where we find ourselves, we see these groupings that approach the High Court arguing the element of constitutionality, and this is where then we saw also the lawyers of the president, they're here, the lawyers of the health minister also here, they are arguing as well. They started by saying that really when you look at it, if you are to argue that this is a constitutional violation, why aren't you taking this matter then to the Constitutional Court where it will receive joy there? Also talking about the fact that the Constitutional Court, or the Constitution, is what is based on the president being appointed in his power. And they're saying that if you are then looking for a reversal of some of these decisions coming by law, introduced by the president after these consultations, then you should have approached the Constitutional Court instead of the High Court. So outside, as we see this happening outside, we have the SACP, we have COSATU. They've been here, they were here even yesterday demonstrating. They're in support of government and the president, calling for just the rollout of the NHI in its current nature. I'm going to invite into the conversation now the SACP to just give us a sense of how you guys are receiving these developments here. I know very well that you would want then for the NHI to be implemented as early as tomorrow, but we see all of these delays, the president signing this act, the bill into an act in May last year, and we're expecting that at least by now there would have been certain developments around this particular issue. But we find you here, you were in court as well, just listening in on these arguments that were made. Maybe let's get a reaction from what happened in court, and you'll give us a sense of why we find you here and you're applying pressure in supporting the government. Welcome to the SABC.
Thank you very much, Katlego, and thank you to the viewers out there. As a Communist Party, indeed, we are here, and absolutely, like you have just captured, we support the NHI very, very firmly. Our slain leader, Chris Hani, called for what he called the Triple H campaign, by which he referred to health, hunger, and housing. The first H is the health. And also, as all this legal juggling is taking place, the reality is that 55 million South Africans are trying their level best to survive out of a meager 49% of the country's health resources, while the small minority of 11% benefit 51% of the health resources. Behind these legal applications and so on are groups that are satisfied with the status quo. As the Communist Party, we think that it is appalling that 30 years after democracy, we still have 55 million being served by 49% of the country's health resources. No wonder the public health is in such a shambles and shame. And therefore, we think that with the president having signed, bravo to him for that, bravo to the legislative process that was unfolding leading to that, the public hearings in the National Assembly, in the National Council of Provinces and everywhere else where the act was actually passed. The public can no longer wait. And lastly, now with the Western administration of Trump having withdrawn the funding for the NGOs and for the public health systems, therefore, it is absolutely imperative that our NHI must be rolled out as in yesterday. We cannot wait.
Just give us a sense then of where to from here, because we're seeing you saying you're applying pressure from outside and we're seeing inside all of these developments taking place. Where to from here, and how do we actually see this act balancing matters, because they're arguing that it is taking away from where we find ourselves now, especially the medical aid groups?
Yeah, the SACP, having marched through Discovery, for instance, and Busa last year alongside COSATU, we are going to continue to roll out that action. In fact, we have rallied around what we call the Friends of the NHI, which is convened by ourselves and ourselves as a person, as a national convener of the Friends of the NHI, alongside COSATU, alongside the unions Dinosa, Samatu, and Nehau. We are calling on other formations like the alumni of the Cuban-trained doctors. We are calling even the ANC itself that we must now mount public pressure, because that's what has to happen. The NHI cannot be delayed one more time. The people are dying. The poor people cannot afford health care, health services, and therefore we will be mounting pressure from now. We will support the president, we will support the minister. We want the NHI to be rolled out. That's what we'll be calling for. We have set an appointment with the minister in which we would like him and his department to outline steps to implement the NHI. That's our way forward going forward. But also, we will not move out of the streets. We will be to the streets. We will take the battles politically to the doorsteps of Busa, to the doorsteps of Discovery, to the doorsteps of all the medical aids who are benefiting from this inequitable healthcare in our country. We will be taking the war to them.
All right, Mr. Phumzile Mnguni, thank you very much, sir. Coming through from the SACP, and you hear them saying that they are going to be applying pressure. It's hot inside, Nompu. It's hot outside. You can tell, and we see them saying that they are really, really pushing to support the government in this particular application of the NHI. What is happening right now, Nompu? We've adjourned because the power just cut off, and this was the case as well yesterday. So we're expecting, or we're waiting to hear a way forward here, whether this particular matter will continue today or it will adjourn to tomorrow, but also they are looking at maybe moving it to virtual platforms as well, because where we are today is where we found ourselves yesterday as well. Nompu?
All right, thank you so much for that report, my colleague there, Katlego Legodi.